Hi, Infinite Audit friends. Welcome to the 13th edition of Infinite Audit Talks. KPMG, one of the four major accounting and auditing professional service companies in the world, published an article that dissects the role of critical thinking skills in transforming the internal audit function. The article is entitled Transforming Internal Audit Through Critical Thinking and was published in response to the result of the IIA Global Survey. There are a lot of things related to the critical thinking things, such as an open-minded analysis, deep context providing, and structured brainstorming that can be improved in audit process. And today, dear Infinite Audit friends, in 13th edition, we will discuss about the critical thinking in auditing. And to start the discussion, I would like to throw a very simple and basic questions: how to apply the critical thinking in audit jobs?
Okay, hello Bunga. Thank you for your questions, and hello Infinite friends. We are back with the English edition of Infinite Audit Talk, and today we are gonna talk about critical thinking. Okay, for answer the questions, I think first of all, I do believe that critical thinking is like the brain of auditing process. You, Bunga, mentioned previously about the IA Global Survey. In the IA Global Internal Audit Competency Framework, critical thinking is one of the key required personal skill identified. And most organizations consider it as a compulsory skill for their internal auditors. And also, the IIA also mentioned about critical thinking is like the central ingredient necessary for providing insight that help management better manage risk and create a sustainable control environment. Critical thinking skill also lead to improve decision making and can result in better organizational performance. So yeah, that's what IIA mentions about critical thinking. In audit process, we apply it since the planning process and mainly in the analysis process to draw a conclusion and come out with recommendations. What areas should we audit? What could provide the biggest value for the organization? What's the result of my judgment? What's the best applicable recommendation? Every step needs us to think critically. And regarding your questions, what should we do to be able to think critically? I think, first of all, we have to be able to think objectively. So we should never think subjectively when it comes to our audit process. And then the second one, in addition, I think we have to be open-minded, like think from a lot of perspective. And then the third one, I think we have to think logic, rational, and also use the best use of your brain. And then also dig deeper, be curious, be skeptical. Like every auditor needs to be skeptical, right? And then don't forget to challenge the status quo, the accepted assumption, and your bias, of course. When we have bias, challenge that. And then I think this is the last one. Since I'm a woman, I use my emotion a lot. So I think to think critically, we have to put our emotion down when we perform our audit process, so we can think rationally and also objectively. Okay, I think that's for me. And the same questions for you, Bunga. How to apply critical thinking in the audit field based on your opinion?
Well, thank you, Mbak Im, for the questions. Basically, KPMG describes the internal audit maturity model in a pyramid containing the stages that need to be passed before becoming an internal audit function that have high capability of critical thinking in providing added value. According to the model, basically critical thinking is a maturation stage which was previously preceded by the development of auditing skills foundation, understanding of the processes of the organizations and system, and in-depth knowledge of the industry, like a business organization or field. When it has reached the critical thinking stage and continuous improvement inherent in it process, auditors always focus on solution, think investigatively and designing scenarios and solution in persist in important discussions. The basic thing from a critical thinking approach in internal audit, according to the KPMG, is open-minded, have a good situation analysis, depth context providing, brainstorming, and also a good concluding. KPMG also underlines several benefits of integrating critical thinking patterns in internal audit process, such as the first one is the alignment of the audit area with the organization's long-term vision, so that internal audit will be seen as a valuable forward-looking business partner. This is, like something that make us different, valuable and forward-looking business partner. And the second one is the audit planning by considering various level like as function, area, technology, process. So the audit planning itself is, much more holistic. And the third one is the audit results are determined and measured in the form of tangible benefits, like a tangible values for the organization. And stakeholders will often request the involvement of the internal audit functions. Of course, if we are, if our functions felt as, very, very favorable one, of course, the stakeholders will often request the involvement of the internal audit functions from us. And from the explanation of the survey results and the arguments that I already mentioned before, we can really understand that the common thread on how important critical thinking and communication skill are to be mastered by the internal auditors. So yeah, that's my first question. And I have another questions for you regarding this issue. Basically, how to cultivate critical thinking in audit field.
Thank you, Bunga, for your questions regarding that, how to cultivate critical thinking in audit field. Interesting. Now that we know how important critical thinking for auditor is, cultivating that skill is becoming more important too. But how? How can we grow and enhance our critical thinking skills? I mentioned previously that first thing first, we have to be objective. Think objectively. The standard mentioned about it, but more than that, to be able to think critically, we have to be objective too. How to be objective? We should be free from personal bias, I believe, and we should be neutral. We should see things as they are. And then the second one, in addition to that, be open-minded. Be open to more possibility that could happen. Think from a lot of perspectives. To widen our perspective, read a lot, be exposed to a lot of discussion with different kinds of people, accept that beside our existing perspective, there are various perspectives that words to be studied. And the third one, I believe, is to be logic and rational. But how to be more rational? Collect the needed evidence to support your argument. So yeah, don't be drawn to your emotional thinking. Yeah, I believe that we have to be logic and we need to collect the supporting evidence. And then we have to dig deeper, be curious, be skeptical. Don't stop because it's comfortable to stop. Instead, stop when we believe the evidence we collected is enough. And also don't accept everything as explained when you doubt it. Be curious, seek further explanation and be skeptical about it. And beside that, challenge the status quo, the accepted assumption. If you have assumption, please doubt it. Please reassess it. If there is status quo, think another possible option too. And then I mentioned before that as a woman, we tend to use our emotion more. So yeah, when we want to think critically, we have to put our emotion down. We have to tone down the usage of our emotions, since we have to think more logical. We have to be more rational to be able to think critically. Okay, and I have the same questions to you, Bunga. So, what do you think? How to be able to cultivate your critical thinking more?
Thank you, Mbak, for the questions. Well, interesting. Yeah, I do believe for me, I will continue to build at least two things. The first one is to strengthen your very, very personal analysis strategy. Arrange your personal fishbone analysis, identify the problem, work out the major factors that involve, identify possible causes, and the second one is build a true false and believe or not thoughts. I do believe that making questions in critical thinking aims to understand what we want. For example, if we think, should I believe this news? Then ask, is it literally true or not? Because there are various factors that we need to look at the existing evidence that may be disguised by other factors. Besides that, there are things that I think also crucial regarding the critical thinking, since I do believe critical thinking is a collection of ability that enhance and reinforce one another. Therefore, other skills are needed so that critical thinking skills can be more effective, like analytical skill, effective communication skill, research and inquiry skill, flexibility tolerance for the ambiguity, and also open-minded skepticism. I do believe that bunch of sets of the skills can enhance our critical thinking in audit, significantly. Yeah, but could you mention to us the impact of having auditor with critical thinking skills for the organization?
Okay, thank you, Bunga, for the question. Another interesting question. So, we mentioned it before that the IIA mentioned about the importance of having auditors with a critical thinking skill. Many publications like the KPMG one also mention about it too. But why? What is the impact of having auditors with critical thinking? First of all, of course, I believe the auditor in general have critical thinking skill, but better analytic thinking, better critical thinking skill leads to more accurate conclusion if we can seem accurate. And also we could come up with the different kind of recommendations. We provide several alternatives with which could be chosen by auditee, so they could happily implement our recommendation, or at least with the least burden, because they can choose the alternative that suit them the most. In the end, we could provide the biggest value to the organization, since when the implementation of recommendation is successful, so we could provide value to the organization, we could enhance the value of the organization. Yeah, and I believe that by providing the biggest value, adding the optimum value to the organization, we could achieve the reason why we exist, the reason why internal audit exists. So I do believe by having critical thinking skills, yeah, we could impact the organization a lot. We could give the better value, we could provide the optimum value for the organization, and by that we could achieve our goal as internal auditors. Okay, I think that's from me. And then I want to ask you a questions about what are the distinguishing points between auditors who have high critical thinking skills and those who do not? What do you think, Bunga?
Well, thank you, Mbak. Quite challenging. Distinguishing points between the auditors who have high critical thinking skills and those who don't. I do believe that first thing first is the holistic in observing a problem, because the main benefit of the critical thinking is that it makes it easier for someone to observe the problem at hand. Basically, people with high critical thinking skill will always think rationally and logically and have clear reasons. And that will not possible if there is no observation of the problem first. And the advantages is that you will find it easier to anticipate bad things with mature observation skill. You will not easily trust anyone without observation, so you are not easily deceived. And the second thing is maybe high analytical skill and have a sharp anticipatory abilities, because you have the ability to observe a problem indirectly. Your analytical skill will develop. This analytical ability can help you to find new ideas and evaluate if there are deficiencies. This is certainly very important and useful when your workplace needs your opinion. On the other hand, critical thinking can hone your creativity. For example, you can find new, more appropriate ways to deal with tough job and even tough situations. And the third one is maybe quick respond in answering question and adaptation. You can also see the negative and positive sides of a certain situation more deeply. When there are questions from other people, you can easily answer them thanks to your sharp analytical skill, of course. I do believe that those are some things that I think I can deliver about what are the differentiating points between the auditors who have a high critical thinking skills and those who don't. So thank you, Mbak. And I would like to give you a closing question. Why nurturing critical thinking skill is hard?
Wow, such a question. Thank you, Bunga. Okay. While critical thinking skill is considered important for auditors, or a lot of organizations realize the importance of critical thinking skill for auditors. Nurturing it isn't the easiest one. I mean, it's not as easy as a walk in a park. So why it's not easy to nurture or enhance our critical thinking skill? So I believe that first of all we have to mention that we all have bias. We are exposed to different kind of information. We are exposed to different kind of culture. We are exposed to different kind of opinions. So that personal bias consciously, and even harder when it is unconsciously. So when we are not even realizing that we are having that bias. So why critical thinking is hard? Because we all have personal bias, and it becomes harder when we don't realize that we have that bias. The second one about emotions. It's hard to separate emotion in our daily life. So critical thinking basically asks us to be logic, to be rational, but we cannot say that emotion is not part of us. Emotion is a part of our body. Emotion is a part of our day. So I do believe that critical thinking couldn't walk together with emotions, but emotion is something integral with us. So yeah, I think the second one is having emotions is also making nurturing critical thinking is hard. And then the third one I want to mention about culture. Our culture, in our culture, the act of skepticism, yeah, which is the root of critical thinking skill, could be seen as evil. So when we as auditor too skeptical of the things the auditees do, they will see us as the evil person. So I do believe that by having this culture in our country, it's hard to be critical, but at the same time maintain our image. I mean, we want to be seen as a good person. We want to be seen as a kind person, but to be critical, sometimes we have to be seen as evil, and it's not something easy for us to be seen as someone evil, right? And then I want also mention about personal perspective that we have we all have personal perspective. So by that perspective, I mean, for example, Bunga's perspective and my perspective are different. And while it's important to see everything from a lot of perspective, but we all have that personal perspective that we believe the most. So it's kind of hard when we want to see from other perspective, when we basically believe that our personal perspective is like the rightest one. I think that that's what I have in mind, why nurturing critical thinking skill is hard. Okay, and to conclude our discussion, I want to ask you the final questions about the challenge. So, what are the challenges in applying critical thinking, especially for auditors? What do you think, Bunga? What do you think, Bunga?
Well, thank you, Mbak. Several things can hinder the critical thinking process in decision making, like the mentality, difficult to change mentality, rigid mindset, traditional practice guidelines, habits, and routine. And in addition, sometimes we feel afraid to make a mistakes. Yes, human being, reluctant to take risks or seek alternative strategies. Often make decision without sufficient data or without being supported by rational things. So yeah, that's maybe like for things that I do believe can be the obstacles in applying critical thinking in our life. And Infinite Audit friends, this is the end of the Infinite Audit Talks in episode 13. We are so happy to be able to discuss with you. And as usual, if you have any ideas to be discussed together, please comment, drop your words in the chat column, and you can also discuss with us on our LinkedIn platform in Gresika, Bunga Sylvana, and Nur Imroatun Sholihat. And see you later and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next episode.